A wife was sipping on a glass of wine while sitting on the patio with her husband. And she says, "I love you so much. I know that I could not do anything without you." Her husband asks, "Is that you or the wine talking?" She replies, "It's me talking to the wine." My friends in Christ, there's a side of Jesus in today's gospel that we do not see very often and reflect on. And that side is the righteous anger that Jesus brought out. He brought it out against the Pharisees and the scribes for their hypocrisy. And sometimes Jesus went against the grain. Sometimes Jesus stood up and spoke out against the unfair practices and attitudes of the religious leaders of that time. You could say that there were times that Jesus rebelled against the system. Now, perhaps we don't hear this very often, but maybe we do need to hear it more. And the word rebel usually carries a negative connotation, rebelling against society. Perhaps to lump it all these together and saying that rebelling in general would be seen to be bad. But righteous, religious rebellion can often be very right. Sometimes as believers, you and I are called to rebel. Within our society and our world today, it is so easy for us to sit back, get comfortable, see decisions that are made, and just go with the flow. How often, within our own lives, in religious discussion, whether with friends and families of other denominations, that we sit back and say nothing and refuse to defend our own faith and our own beliefs. Sometimes we as Christian people are called to rebel against others, believe to be what is right. So let's not do something just because it seems everybody else is doing it. Like they say in Rome, do as the Romans do. If that's our attitude with life, with faith, and our relationship with God, if we are just comfortable going through the motions, we've lost sight. We see today, in our gospel today, how Jesus rebelled. He went to his father's house. There they had turned it into a marketplace, the selling of oxen and doves, the coin changers, and the temple was to be a sacred place, a house of prayer, his father's house. And Jesus reminds us that the human heart of Jesus came about, and that anger, righteous anger, came about, and he cast them out of the table. And yet the scribes and the Pharisees questioned him on his rebuilding of the temple in 3 days. Yet Jesus was talking about his own body. You know, my dear friends, as we journey in this third Sunday of Lent, which is passing very quickly, it's a perfect time for us maybe to rebel a little bit, beginning with ourselves, asking the question, when was it the last time I made that special effort to go to confession? To rebel against the sin that I struggle with within my life, and to be at peace with God, and to see what is right and just. We can get so caught up and we can justify our actions, our thoughts, think that God's law can be seen as foolish, out of date. Yet, it is so important for us, even now, when we look and see what's happening within our society, within our country, how life has been threatened even more, the dignity of human life to the unborn, and we see what is happening. We have a responsibility as Christians, as Catholics, to rebel. You know, St. Paul gives us great consolation today when he writes almost 2,000 years ago, when he encountered the same situation, when he writes to the Corinthians, they had definitely gone down the wrong path. They had lost sight of everything. And St. Paul writes to them, he reminds them that the cross seems to be a folly to some, but it is a source of salvation to those who believe. For God's folly is wiser than human wisdom. God perceived weakness is greater than any human strength. That is what Lent is about, to see the words, while the cross seems to be folly to some, is the source of salvation to those who believe in God. That is you and I. So often, unfortunately, we're like stone cutters. Warning of problems and consequences come our way, and we choose to ignore them. In our relationship with Christ, we continue on the path of self-destruction, whether it's health-related issues, situations in work, our marriage, family, personal relationships. The path that leads to life is clear, but we often choose another path. Jesus makes the choice very clear when he spoke to his disciples about the Sermon on the Mount, that we who embrace what is put before us, even though it may be a challenge, we are blessed. The path is wide, and many choose it. But how narrow is the gate of life? How rough is the road, and how few there are to find it? My friends, Lent is the springtime of our spirituality. It is that beautiful time in which the Lord invites us to be rebellious, to rebel against Satan and all his works, all his evil promises. Today reminds us of the commandments. They're not out of date. They are alive and active, and they're a good source for each and every one of us to reflect on. My friends, our life and our relationship with God, sometimes we have to take that risk, even if it means we have to rebel a little bit. The question is, are we willing to do so?